at exactly 300 hours, every screen in the operations center went dark, and with it the last hope of recovering 4 missing recon teams. Just as Colonel Thomas Morse gave the order to abort, a woman no one expected walked in, barefoot, coffee in hand, and whispered, "You're listening on the wrong frequency." What happened next turned a failed mission into something no one could have predicted. Who was she, and how did she know what the most advanced tech teams didn't? Before we dive in, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story might just change the way you see loyalty, instinct, and the thin line between chaos and command. Colonel Thomas Morse hadn't blinked in over a minute. He stood, rigid and silent, one hand resting on the edge of the steel console as if grounding himself in reality. The flickering wall of monitors in front of him offered nothing but static, blistering white noise that hissed across a dozen screens, turning once sharp surveillance feeds into a ghostly wash of signal collapse. Morse didn't need confirmation. He already knew what this meant. They were gone. Not dead, not yet, but unreachable. For the last 47 minutes, every line to recon units, Echo, Raven, Sabre, and Wolf, had gone cold. No telemetry. No heartbeat signals. No GPS. The last ping had come from the edge of the Darial Ridge system, a tangled stretch of stone and forgotten Soviet tunnels buried in the most remote quadrant of the Blackmore exclusion zone. After that, nothing. Morse flexed his jaw once and stepped away from the console. His boots echoed across the concrete floor of the Joint Ops Center, a cavernous room lit only by dead monitors and the faint green glow of a backup status grid. Engineers and analysts worked furiously in silence, eyes darting between diagnostics and real-time encryption diagnostics that led nowhere. "Status on Raven team," Morse said, voice low but sharp. "Still no uplink," said Chenoweth, not looking away from her screen. Last known packet was timestamped 2:07 and 43 seconds, tracking toward grid Delta 9er, then full blackout. Same for Sabre. No EM signatures, no comms traffic, no seismic triggers. It's like they just disappeared, Morse finished. He didn't say the word with drama, he said it like a fact, and in the pit of his stomach the ache was starting to become something sharper. Morse had been doing this too long to pretend. Missions didn't just fail quietly, they unraveled like torn thread, leaving frayed ends and blood behind. Across the room, Deputy Commander Eric Sloan shifted on his feet, watching Morse. His tone stayed professional, but the warning was there. "We're coming up on 60 minutes since last contact." Morse's eyes narrowed. "I'm aware. You know what that means." It wasn't a question. Morse knew what it meant. According to SOCOM protocol, any mission with zero contact after a 1-hour threshold was considered compromised. Automatic classification, mission failure. All field assets required recall. That meant shutting down the operation entirely, scrubbing satellite feeds, and logging the entire thing as a ghost op. Deniable disavowed, buried under black ink and clearance stamps. But Morse didn't move. Not yet. He turned toward the far wall, where systems engineer Joel Maddox stood hunched over the primary relay console. Sweat clung to the man's temples as he ran another sweep through the signal buoy algorithms. He'd rerun the same diagnostic loop 17 times now. Each time, the answer was the same. No fault detected on their end. No internal errors. Nothing to fix. Morse approached quietly. "You said the signal buoy is clean?" "Pristine," Maddox muttered. "Everything we launched is operational, data integrity at 100%. The problem isn't ours. Something on the other end is cutting signal, like it's being swallowed." Morse's brow furrowed. "Swallowed?" Maddox shook his head. "I mean it's being disrupted mid-transmission. Not jammed exactly, it's cleaner than jamming. It's like the message was never sent." "Terrain?" "Negative. The valley's mapped for line-of-sight relay. No geological interference, no thermal distortion. We've got triple-bounce satellites shadowing the whole grid. And if they've moved underground? That'd explain the blackout. but not the clean break. We'd still see trace signal decay. There's nothing. No drop. Just gone. Morse exhaled through his nose and stepped back. That was worse than jamming, worse than a tech failure, because if it wasn't on their end, then it was deliberate, engineered, predicted. He turned toward the center of the room. Bring up last thermal ping. Chenoweth tapped rapidly at her console. One screen came to life in a burst of digital noise, then snapped into view, a still frame. Grainy, but unmistakable. A single white heat signature glowed near the bottom of the screen, caught at the far edge of surveillance grid Charlie. It was humanoid, bent forward slightly, maybe carrying something. But it was the position that disturbed Morse. It was outside the target corridor, way outside. It had no reason to be there. Then came in at 2:53, Chenoweth said. Then static, complete blackout after that. Morse stared at it. He didn't speak for several seconds. Then he turned slowly, walking back toward the central command dais where the abort terminal waited. The command key was already slotted in place. All he had to do was press one button and end it. Call off the birds. Signal all units to withdraw, if they were even alive to hear it. He reached for it. Yeah, wrong frequency. The words came from behind him, calm, almost offhand, like someone commenting on a loose shoelace or a flickering light bulb. Morse turned sharply. She stood at the entrance to the command room, barefoot, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt under an unzipped hoodie, her hair tousled like she'd woken from a nap. A ceramic coffee mug steamed gently in her hand, her eyes clear, focused, unflinching, locked directly onto Morse. Dana Whitaker. Morse didn't recognize her immediately, though the name would come to him later. Civilian analyst, recently transferred from Satellite Intel Command, special clearance, background in electromagnetic telemetry and off-spectrum wave analysis. "What did you say?" Morse asked. "You're looking on the wrong frequency," she repeated. Her tone was unbothered, not arrogant, just sure. Sloan stepped forward. "Ma'am, this is a restricted field op. You need to—" "Shut it down, like he was about to do?" she asked, nodding toward Morse. "Yeah, I figured. You've got 4 teams underground, 2 relay buoys, a primary drone link, and you're scanning all known UHF and encrypted military bands. But nothing's coming through." She walked forward, still holding the mug, and pointed to Maddox's console. "Mind if I?" Maddox hesitated, glancing at Morse. The colonel gave a slight nod. Dana leaned in, typed 3 lines of code, and paused. "You didn't adjust for signal bleed through rock-strain resonance. These tunnels are preconception Soviet builds, reinforced carbon metal layering. You're losing harmonic bleed." "That's not even a documented frequency range," Maddox muttered. "Right. That's why you didn't look." She hit the enter key. The screen blinked. Then, just like that, 6 new windows bloomed across the wall of monitors, each one filled with cascading lines of data, comms packets, location telemetry, real-time biosignal feedback. And one live feed. The black and white image resolved slowly. Recon Team Sabre, 5 men, dirty, scratched, exhausted, but alive. One of them held up a hand toward the drone, blinking rapidly at the returning signal. Morse's jaw tightened. Around the room, chairs scraped, screens flared to life. Analysts scrambled into action. "Telemetry reacquired on all teams," Chenoweth gasped. "We're getting them all. Echo, Raven, Wolf, full biosign returns, no casualties confirmed. Sir, they're alive." Morse didn't move. His gaze was still on Dana, who now stood quietly beside the console, sipping her coffee. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't smug. She was just there. "How did you know?" he asked her. She shrugged. "I listened differently." Then she turned and walked back out, barefoot steps echoing softly as the command center roared back to life. Morse watched her go, then turned back to the screens. The mission wasn't dead. It had just started again. Thomas Morse didn't like enigmas. He respected logic, structure, protocols etched into steel and stone. Orders were sacred. Orders saved lives. That was what had carried him through 27 years of command. But now, standing in the center of a war room that had been moments away from going dark for good, he found himself silently reevaluating everything he thought he knew about timing, instinct, and the girl who walked in barefoot. The live feeds were back, partially. Frames stuttered, audio glitched, but the signals were there. Flickering green pulses tracking each recon team's vitals, live positioning updating by the second. The men were moving again. Breathing. Bleeding, some of them, but not dead. Not yet. "Grid realignment complete," Chenoweth called out from her terminal. "We've got active comms pings from Raven and Echo, passive telemetry from Saber. Wolf's uplink is weak, but we're filtering it now." Sloan hovered near the comms board, headset half on, trying to coordinate fragmented field transmissions. "Team leaders are checking in, minimal audio clarity, but they're responding with heartbeat confirms. Looks like we may have been on the edge of losing them. Another 10 minutes and—" "Don't finish that sentence," Morse muttered, pacing slowly in front of the monitor wall. His hands were behind his back, his expression unreadable, but his eyes hadn't left the live drone feed of Saber Team for more than a second. Dust, debris, exhaustion, all of it painted across their armor and faces. But there was movement, and movement meant hope. "What the hell just happened?" Sloan said finally, his voice lowered as he approached Morse. "I mean, she just walked in here, tapped a few keys like she was adjusting a playlist, and suddenly every advanced system we've got lights up again. That shouldn't be possible." "She wasn't wrong," Morse replied without looking at him. "We were on the wrong frequency." "Sure, but how did she know that?" Morse didn't answer. He was already thinking 3 layers deep. The op wasn't back on track. It was suspended mid-air, swaying. Just enough stability to prevent a full collapse, but the ground was still fragile. Every second they kept those teams in the field was a gamble. He needed intel, he needed stability, and he needed answers. "Where is she?" he asked. Chenoweth looked up. "Whitaker? She left right after the diagnostic ping, didn't say a word. I think she went back down to the secondary data bay." Morse nodded once. "Keep feeding me telemetry. Get a clean audio stream up from the strongest team. Raven, if you can—" He turned and walked toward the blast doors at the far end of the room. The secondary bay was 2 floors below. Less screens, less chatter, more silence. The kind of place Morse usually avoided, except when something didn't add up. He found Dana there, just as Chenoweth had guessed, sitting cross-legged on the floor with her laptop balanced across one knee, cable lines snaking from a wall-mount junction box. She didn't look up when he entered. "You're not supposed to be here," she said quietly. "I'm not here to reprimand you." "That's good, because I wouldn't care." Morse folded his arms and leaned against the frame. "I don't like mysteries, Whitaker. You walked into my op and saved 4 teams with a line of code that wasn't in any standard frequency band. So I'm going to ask this once, and you're going to answer." Finally, she looked up. There was nothing defensive in her posture, no arrogance, just those calm, direct eyes. "I didn't break your system. I listened around it." Morse's brow furrowed. "Explain." "Traditional comm bands weren't responding. You kept boosting signal strength across encrypted UHF. But these tunnels, they're old, Colonel. Not just structurally. They hum with harmonic residue. Soviet designers embedded signal-suppressive alloys into the walls to prevent Western tracking. But those materials create their own feedback loops, which we accounted for in our bounce relays. You accounted for known interference. But I found something else." She turned the laptop toward him. "I filtered the dead bandwidth, caught harmonic distortion on a non-military pulse, below 3 mms. It was faint but consistent, not wide enough to carry traditional audio, but enough to ride compressed signal packets if timed with resonance. Morse stared at the jagged waveform dancing across her screen. He didn't fully understand it, but he understood results. "You've done this before," he said finally. She looked down. "Not for this agency." She didn't answer, but the silence was confirmation enough. Morse exhaled slowly. "You shouldn't have access to this facility. Field operations are strictly clearanced here, which is why I didn't wait for permission." That answer, simple and dangerous, hung between them. Morse wanted to be angry, but the part of him that remembered how it felt to lose contact with 4 units in the dark, that part couldn't deny what she'd done. Without her, they would have been calling families tonight, writing eulogies in secret, folding flags. He straightened. "I need you in comms with Maddox, effective immediately." She blinked. "You're not kicking me out?" "No. I'm reassigning you. The mission just shifted from recon to recovery." Her lips pressed together. "They found something, didn't they?" Echo Team's final packet hinted at a possible subterranean corridor deeper than anything mapped. They were following a signal trace. Right before they vanished. She nodded slowly. "You think it's man-made?" "I don't think anything yet," Morse replied. "But whatever it is, I want my people out of there in one piece, and if that means you breaking every rule in the book to get them home..." He let the rest hang. Dana stood, slid her laptop into a worn canvas bag and zipped it shut. "I'll need full access to relay modulations and frequency mapping." "You'll get it." "And override clearance." Morse hesitated. "I'll get it approved." "No time." She brushed past him. "You're going to have to trust me, Colonel." He turned as she walked away, her footsteps fading toward the elevator. Sloan was waiting when Morse returned to the command deck. "We've got Raven's team leader on partial audio," he said. 3 men injured but mobile. They're in what they describe as hollow ground, like an abandoned rail shaft, artificial walls, no light, some kind of humming in the stone. They're trying to move east. Coordinates coming in garbled. We'll try to triangulate with drone pings. Still no full audio from Saber or Wolf. Morse stood at the edge of the console again. The op wasn't a recovery anymore. It was a puzzle, and he had one civilian analyst, barefoot, underdressed and inconvenient as hell, who might be the only one capable of solving it. He reached for the comm button. "Get me Maddox and Whitaker and relay control in 10. We're about to change how we define mission control." Dana Whitaker didn't sit in the operations chair like everyone else. She perched on the edge of it, one leg folded beneath her, the other foot flat on the ground, almost like she might leap up and leave again at any second. Her fingers flew across the relay board with a precision that seemed casual, but Morse could tell it wasn't. She wasn't showing off. She was listening. Engineer Joel Maddox sat 2 seats over, silently watching her screen. His mouth was tight, arms crossed, shoulders tense. He didn't speak unless spoken to, and right now, he didn't like what he was seeing. Not because it was wrong, but because it worked. They were in comms subdeck 2, a narrow chamber buried beneath 2 stories of concrete and fail-safes. This was the backup of the backup, the place operations went when the main decks lost connection. It smelled like cold metal, caffeine, and static. A hum of generators pulsed just behind the walls, grounding every console in an invisible vibration. Colonel Morse stood behind them, arms folded, eyes locked on the center monitor. "Raven's signal is holding steady," Dana said, not looking up. "I've got a clean trace on 3 band shifts. Their comms are bleeding into a harmonic bounce across the corridor walls. I'm narrowing the bandwidth window to suppress echo." Maddox raised an eyebrow. "That's not in the protocol. You're risking fragmentation." Dana tapped a key and adjusted the gain. "That's why I'm time-slicing the packets. 4 millisecond delays. They'll stagger instead of clash. Maddox opened his mouth, then closed it. Morse leaned in. How stable? 86%. Might hold for a few more minutes if they keep moving east. She shifted the angle of one of the smaller antenna control sticks, tweaking the digital receiver alignment. On the wall-mount screen, a digital representation of the recon team's paths lit up in dotted color trails. Red, green, yellow, blue. 4 teams, deep in a labyrinth of forgotten concrete veins. I've never seen signal threading like this, Maddox admitted after a moment. Not in field systems. Because it isn't taught, Dana replied, still focused. This is Cold War telemetry math, built for deep ground signal capture in non-conventional terrain. Morse narrowed his eyes. So? Where'd you learn it? She paused. My father was a comms officer. Taught me Morse before I could ride a bike. I used to listen to Navy traffic on a ham radio under the stairs. Didn't realize until I was older that some of what I picked up wasn't meant for civilian ears. You were eavesdropping on encrypted naval signals as a kid? She gave the faintest shrug. I was bored. And curious. Morse almost smiled. Almost. On the central monitor, Raven Team's audio cracked to life. Static, then the broken, breathless voice of Sergeant Caleb Vance. Raven 1, confirm movement. 3 men mobile, 2 wounded. Found substructure, no exit yet. Signal stabilizing. Copy, Raven 1. Sloane's voice came over the room-wide comm, his tone clipped with urgency. Your position's been acquired. Continue east. Extraction route is being developed. Hold fast. Whitaker leaned closer to her screen, her fingers stilled. Wait. Everyone in the room stopped. What is it? Morse asked. Dana pointed to a cluster of faint green lines on the topographic overlay. They weren't moving. They weren't blinking. This signal here, it's not theirs. It's not bouncing with them. It's embedded, stationary. Could be leftover data, Maddox said. The grid's still refreshing. Dana shook her head. It's not artifact noise. It's a passive carrier tone. Faint, but consistent, like it's listening. The room chilled a little. Morse stepped forward. Listening? Yeah, some kind of reflective node. Possibly a repeater. But not ours. It's old, pre-military. She clicked through a handful of screens, pulling up the full bandwidth analysis. It's running a constant cycle at 2.91 minute-hue. Not for transmission. It's a trigger. A trigger for what? I don't know yet, she admitted. But if our teams get too close to it. Before she could finish, the room filled with a sharp alarm. All 4 signal feeds began pulsing red. Signal degradation, 90%, Maddox barked. All teams just dropped below critical threshold. Echo Team's vitals are spiking, Chenoweth's voice came from above. Heart rate spikes, accelerated breathing. One of them just collapsed. Reroute compression buffers now, Morse snapped. Dana was already typing. No, it's responding to proximity. They got too close. Whatever that carrier signal is, it reacts to biosigns. You're saying it's pressure sengered? I'm saying we're not alone down there, she said. Someone built these tunnels to filter signals and bait responses. If it hears us listening, it listens back harder. If it hears bodies. She didn't finish the thought. She didn't have to. Morse stepped forward and leaned over the console. Get me a split stream through the upper relay node. I want full eyes on that carrier beacon. I can't stabilize both at the same time, Dana replied quickly. If I hold the teams, I lose the echo trace. If I hold the echo, we lose the teams. Then give me the echo. Maddox flinched. Sir. Morse didn't blink. We already know what happens if we don't understand this thing. I'm not letting them move blind. Dana typed rapidly, muttering numbers under her breath. At the screen, the 4 recon teams flickered, sliding into low resolution, some feeds collapsing into heartbeat only. But a new image bloomed in the center of the board. It was grainy, full of digital noise, but unmistakable. A long corridor, crumbling stone, reinforced piping across the ceiling. And there, nestled against the corner where two tunnels met, a steel panel, embedded with 4 rusted antennae, pulsing with soft, rhythmic light. It looked like something out of a forgotten era, part machine, part relic. "What is that?" Maddox whispered. Dana leaned closer. "It's a listening post, but it's not active surveillance, it's passive. It waits." Morse stepped closer. Waits for what? To be noticed. A moment passed. No one moved. Then the feed blinked once, and the light on the panel pulsed brighter, once, twice, and then went dark. The entire screen shut down with it. All signals went dead again. Raven, Echo, Saber, Wolf. Blackout. Dana exhaled sharply, already typing. "I can bring them back. I can rethread the bounce loop." Morse shook his head. "No." She froze. "What?" "Not yet. We don't move until we understand what just happened. If we react too fast, that thing might shut them out permanently." I need to ping them, just a passive scan." "No," Morse said, firmer now. "We don't risk triggering it again." Silence settled. Maddox looked at Dana. She looked at Morse. And Morse walked to the center of the room. He looked at the dead screens. "We've spent this entire mission assuming we were tracking someone." He paused. "Maybe we were the ones being tracked." No one argued. Outside the reinforced walls of the bunker, the ground above them stretched into silence. Mountains wrapping around forgotten stone corridors and Cold War ghosts that now stirred for the first time in decades. And down below, somewhere in the dark, 4 recon teams were breathing, waiting, wondering if anyone was still listening. The drone's infrared feed flickered once, then held steady. Blurry black and white grain filled the screen, framing a narrow corridor lined with warped support beams and veins of rusted steel. It was the first clean visual they'd gotten in over 30 minutes, and even that felt like a gift earned with blood. On screen, a figure moved, cautiously, slowly, rifle at the ready. Helmet-mount camera gave just enough perspective to tell he was leading point. Sergeant Mason, Hawk Delaney, team lead for Echo. His silhouette was tense. Alert, not panicked, but clearly hunting more than just a way out. Colonel Morse stood with his arms behind his back, eyes fixed on the screen. He said nothing, even as the low hum of chatter filled the room around him. Sloan had taken control of the command deck while Dana and Maddox worked from the lower relay station. The current objective was clarity. Find out where the teams had ended up, how they were still breathing, and what the hell they were moving toward. "Thermals confirmed 7 total figures," Chenoweth said from her station. "That's 5 Echo, 2 Saber. Looks like they linked up after the blackout." "It a Raven?" Morse asked. "Don't let them," Morse said without hesitation. "If this place is reacting to body heat or movement patterns, punching holes in the wrong walls might get them buried." Chenoweth nodded, already patching an order through. The corridor on the feed twisted into a broader junction, and for a moment everyone fell silent. The floor sloped slightly downward. On one side, a collapsed section littered with corroded ductwork and half-melted panels. On the other, a sealed bulkhead, perfectly square, untouched by time. It didn't match the rest of the tunnel. The stone was newer, or maybe just cleaner. Either way, it was wrong. Delaney paused at the door, hand lifted in a silent signal to hold. The 2 men behind him obeyed instantly. The colonel's voice cut through comms. "Delaney, report." The sergeant's voice came back slow and gravelly, as if every word had to push its way through dust and exhaustion. "We've found something artificial. This isn't Soviet. Hell, I don't think it's military at all. Describe it. 8x8 panels, flush with the wall, seamless edges, no markings. Looks like it's got biometric sensors built in. Maybe a scanner. Lights aren't blinking. Is it transmitting? Delaney's helmet cam angled slightly. No hum, no static, no EM bleed. But there's something else. He leaned closer, and the feed zoomed slightly with him. In the dead center of the panel, faintly etched in the surface, was a symbol. Not a letter, not a number. A spiral. Just a single, uninterrupted spiral, carved so shallow it was nearly invisible under normal light. What the hell is that? Sloan murmured. Not on any known asset registry, Chenoweth confirmed. No agency insignia. Not American, not Russian. Maybe it's local, Maddox said over the secondary line. There were civilian research stations in the zone during the Cold War, underground rail lines, science hubs. None of them built this. Dana's voice cut in. That panel's using composite materials that didn't exist until after 2010. This was placed here after the tunnels were abandoned. By who? Morse asked. No one answered. The silence pressed like stone. Then, softly, Dana added, "Play back the audio loop we pulled during the last carrier bleed, the one that activated when Raven crossed Grid 9 Delta." Maddox was already cueing it. The room filled with a soft, repeating pulse. Not a sound exactly, more like a feeling, a pressure that pulsed just beneath the range of hearing. It was rhythmic, patterned. It didn't sound hostile. It didn't even sound deliberate. It sounded like breathing. Everyone in the ops center sat a little straighter. Delaney's voice returned. "Sir, something's happening." On screen, the sealed panel had begun to glow. Not bright, just a faint bluish sheen around the spiral. The air in the tunnel shimmered faintly with dust. "We didn't touch it," Delaney said. "Didn't step close. It just lit up." "It's reading your proximity," Dana said into the open channel. "Don't move. Hold position." "Too late," Delaney said. "It's opening." The spiral twisted slowly, turning like a dial on a vault. It made no sound. The panel retracted into the floor in one clean motion, revealing a narrow corridor descending even deeper. Its walls lined with smooth black plates that gleamed faintly, even in darkness. "We're going in," Delaney said. "No, you're not," Morse barked. But the feed already showed movement. Delaney had stepped through. The rest of the squad followed. "Pull them back," Sloan said, spinning toward Chenoweth. "They've already crossed the threshold," she replied, voice tight. "Signal's stable for now, but we lose visual in 30 feet. Tunnel materials bouncing signal like a mirror." "God damn it," Morse muttered. He stepped back from the console. The operation had officially crossed into territory none of them had clearance for. This wasn't just a black site. Something worse. It was something worse. Something unknown. He turned toward the side panel and keyed into the secure uplink. "Get me Command Ops in DC, Priority Alpha, now." Dana's voice came through the channel again. "Colonel, before you go high, I'm listening. The signal inside that tunnel is structured. It's not just bounce patterns anymore. I think it's mapping them the same way we're mapping it." "You're saying it's responding?" "No, I'm saying it's learning." A long beat of silence passed. Then Chenoweth said softly, "Colonel, you need to hear this." She patched in a secondary stream to the speaker. It was from Saber Team, still operating separately from Echo. They had moved back toward a high point to establish uplink. A parabolic mic had picked up something under the earth. It was a voice. Faint, distant, looped. The words were garbled, but clear enough to chill the room. "We see you, we hear you, you are not first, you will not be last." Then static. Then nothing. Sloan's face paled. "Jesus." Morse just stared. His jaw was set like iron. When he finally spoke, it was low. "We're not just running a recon anymore. He turned toward the wall of screens where Delaney's team had disappeared into the dark. "This is contact. The call to DC never went through. Not because it failed, but because Colonel Thomas Morse canceled it halfway through the second ring. Something had shifted. Something subtle but unmistakable. It wasn't just the feed from Delaney's helmet cam going dark past that seamless black corridor. It wasn't just the repeating audio loop whispering, 'We see you,' like a distant chant. It was the look on Dana Whitaker's face as she tracked the data feed beyond that opening. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, frozen. Her gaze, sharp and unreadable. She wasn't just reacting to signals anymore. She was recognizing something. Morse crossed the room slowly and said nothing for several long seconds. When he finally spoke, it was in a tone reserved for war councils and funerals. "Talk to me." Dana blinked once, as if snapping back into her body. "There's something beneath the tunnels," she said. "Deeper than our mapping systems show." I ran a low-frequency sonar sweep using the drone's ambient ping delay. The way the echoes refract, it's like the space breathes. Maddox stood to her right, clearly uncomfortable. "That's not a real term." "It is now," she replied. "It expands, contracts. There's motion, but no seismic output. It's not rock settling, it's reactive." "To what?" Sloan asked, skeptical. "To us." Morse absorbed this with a still face. His mind worked silently, analyzing it the way he would analyze a battlefield. You didn't always need to understand your enemy. You just needed to anticipate their next move. "Could it be automated?" he asked. "An old defense system? Sensor-driven? Maybe self-execting?" Dana shook her head. "If it was automated, we'd have seen signal spikes, or at least predictive behavior. But it's learning. It changes after each team movement. Then it's artificial intelligence." She gave him a look that was neither agreement nor contradiction. "It's something intelligent." Sloan stepped closer. "We're beyond the mission parameters, Colonel. I recommend we extract now, re-establish surface control, and recall all teams while we still have partial signal." "No," Dana said instantly, before Morse could answer. "If we pull them now, whatever's down there could shut off completely. We'd lose all telemetry. They'd be trapped." "They're already trapped." "Not if we map the behavior." Sloan scoffed. "This isn't a research project. We're sitting on an op that already smells like it's going to get redacted top to bottom. You think someone up the ladder is going to green light poking further into a possibly sentient tunnel system?" Morse didn't respond immediately. His eyes had locked back on the frozen feed of Echo Team, paused just before signal loss. Delaney's silhouette disappearing into shadow, his squad right behind him. Committed, outnumbered by silence. Then Morse stepped forward and pressed his palm flat against the glass screen. "I've lost men before," he said, voice low. "It doesn't happen often. But when it does, it's always because someone in the chain of command chose protocol over instinct." Sloan's jaw tightened. Morse turned to Dana. "What would you do if I gave you a direct channel and full override?" Her eyes didn't waver. "I'd follow the pattern. Let it finish its behavior cycle. Then I'd break it." "You sure?" "No, but I feel it." Sloan shook his head. "We can't act based on feelings. Not here, not now." "I don't mean gut instinct," Dana said. "I mean pattern resonance. This system down there, it responds to emotional logic, stress, direction, rhythm of movement. It's not just calculating, it's interpreting. That's how I knew the relay signal wasn't blocked. It was redirected, like it wanted us to try harder. Like it was testing us." "You're anthropomorphizing a machine." "Am I?" She pulled up a loop of Delaney's path through the corridor before the panel opened. Each of his movements was highlighted. Pauses, shoulder checks, hand gestures. Then, overlaying those, the spiral's pulse. At first random, then matching. almost like a breath sinking with another. Morse stared. It mimicked him. Or studied him, Dana said, to decide if it should let him in. Sloan stepped away, running a hand down his face in frustration. You're building a whole theory on shadows and lagging signal. Then stop watching the shadows, she said. Start listening to the echo. No one spoke for a moment. Then Morse nodded, quietly. Set the override. Give her the tools. You're overriding SOCOM protocol, Sloan said sharply. I'm overriding my instinct to leave men behind, Morse replied. You can log it however you like. Maddox reluctantly handed Dana the relay code card, then typed in a quick authorization handshake. You've got one shot, he said. If you miscalculate, we lose everything. I know, she replied. She took the override key and slotted it into her console. The relay lights flickered orange, then green. Dana closed her eyes for 2 beats. When she opened them, her hands moved fast. Routing signal through a mirrored gain path, she said aloud. Not trying to force comms, just reflecting movement signature. Giving the system what it wants. What does it want? Sloan asked. She smiled faintly. Curiosity? The monitor blinked. Then, Echo Team's feed returned. Low res, compressed, but moving. Delaney's voice came through, faint but unmistakable. Command, we have eyes on something. It's not a weapon, not machinery. I think it's a vault. Morse stepped forward. What kind of vault? I can't explain it. It's not for storing things. It feels like a memory, like a place something remembers itself from. Dana's hands tightened on the console. Morse keyed his mic. Sergeant Delaney, confirm the area is stable. Hold position. We're initiating a secondary probe. Copy that, came the reply. But, sir. Yes? If this thing is remembering us, we may want to ask why. Morse didn't answer. He didn't need to. The question echoed anyway. And in the deep black corridors of that impossible tunnel system, something seemed to pause in response. For a moment, the operations center held its breath. It wasn't from fear, not anymore. It was something else now, something closer to reverence, the kind of silence that blankets a chapel when light first pours through stained glass. On the screens, live feeds that had flickered for hours now ran steady, as if even the buried machinery of this impossible place had chosen to let go of its secrets. Colonel Thomas Morse watched the monitors, his posture tense but eyes calm. Echo Team stood at the edge of something vast. Not a tunnel, not a vault. A space. The helmet cam footage from Delaney's lead showed a cavern domed with layers of synthetic material unlike anything their science teams had ever classified. It pulsed faintly with color. Red, then blue, then white. Not like light, like memory. This place was built to remember, Dana said quietly, speaking into the open line as she watched the stream. Every signal we sent. It didn't just bounce off the walls. It was stored, replayed, felt, like it was trying to learn who we are by hearing us again and again. Maddox stood next to her, pale but steady. Why would anyone build a place like that? Dana's hands danced over the controls, steady and precise now, no longer fighting the systems, working with them. Because they didn't want to forget. Not just data. People, the frequency patterns. They're layered like speech. There's language in there, but it's not being spoken with words. It's spoken with echoes, with how we move, how we hesitate, how we reach for something, in the dark without knowing what it is. Morse nodded slowly. A resonance archive. Yes, Dana said. Not surveillance, remembrance. On screen, Delaney approached the center of the room. His squad moved behind him, reverent now. Their weapons remained lowered, their eyes wide behind their visors. A circular platform rose silently from the ground, revealing a strange column at its center, metal, smooth, and humming with the same frequency that had first disrupted their signal. The spiral from the earlier bulkhead was carved at the top, only this time it spun on its own, rotating with soft, mechanical grace. "Delaney," Morse called. "Don't touch it. Just describe what you see." "It's reacting to us," Delaney said. We took a step forward and it adjusted. Temperature increased by 1 degree. Light pulse synchronized with our heart rates. It's scanning us again, but gentler this time. Not interrogating, almost like it's greeting us. The audio feed picked up a faint tone, neither threatening nor artificial. A resonance, harmonic and almost melodic, like an ancient lullaby stretched across fiber optic wire. Dana's voice cut in, measured and resolute. "I think it wants to share something, a message, but it can't use our words, only our patterns." "What kind of message?" Sloan asked. There was no edge in his voice anymore, just awe. "I don't know," Dana whispered, "but I think we're already inside it." Morse turned to the relay board. "Patch the feed to the lab. Begin storage protocol. Whatever we're witnessing, it needs to be preserved. Get a full quantum backup." Chenoweth's voice came over the main channel. "Sir." Raven team just re-established comms. They found an adjacent corridor, different structure but similar material. They're reading the same low-frequency pulse. "All teams accounted for?" "Yes, sir." Morse exhaled, a long, quiet breath of relief that left his shoulders lighter. It had been over 9 hours since the blackout. 9 hours of uncertainty, failure, risk. They had stepped beyond the limits of their mission, their maps, and their understanding of how intelligence operations were supposed to work. And somehow they'd come out the other side, not with an enemy engagement, but a conversation in motion. One no one had expected. Dana stood and slowly unplugged her drive from the data console. The screen now displayed a full layout of the subterranean complex. Its impossible corridors, the sequence of signal bounces, the breathing loops of motion-based intelligence. It wasn't a structure built to trap or ambush. It was a structure built to receive, to listen, to hold echoes of human presence in a place forgotten by history. "I think someone wanted to be remembered long after they were gone," Dana said. "There's something," Maddox muttered. "No," Dana replied, quietly but firmly. "This was human. It has all the messiness of us. The warmth, the fragility, the way it responds to uncertainty with curiosity instead of defense. That's not a machine protocol. That's emotion written in circuits." Morse looked at her then, eyes softening in a way that only someone who'd lived through loss could understand. "You saw it before any of us did." "I felt it," she corrected. "We almost didn't." Sloan stepped forward, finally lowering the headset he hadn't taken off for nearly 10 hours. "I'll file my objections in the morning," he said, eyes on the screen. "But I was wrong. Protocol would have buried them. And whatever this is, it needs to be understood, not locked away." "Keep your objections," Morse replied with a faint smile. "I'll make sure they're attached to your promotion paperwork." The room chuckled, the tension breaking at last. It wasn't laughter from victory. It was the kind that came after surviving something unknowable, something sacred. Echo Team emerged from the vault shortly after, the spiral behind them closing as silently as it had opened. No traps, no warnings, just quiet acceptance, as if it knew the moment was over and was ready to rest again. Saber and Raven linked up with them within the hour. No man left behind, no casualty unaccounted for. Even the injured walked under their own power. By sunrise, every team had been lifted from the zone. The comm system, once fried and fractured, now hummed with more clarity than before, almost as if the structure had fixed something inside the signal architecture itself. Dana never said it aloud, but she knew. The complex wasn't just reacting. It was teaching. Later, long after the men had showered, eaten, and dropped into their bunks, Colonel Morse sat in his office, staring at the handheld drive Dana had handed him. Labeled only with a spiral, no names, no clearance tags, just the echo of what they had witnessed. He looked up as Dana stepped into the doorway. "You sure you're okay leaving this in my hands?" he asked. She nodded. "I don't want to own it. I just wanted it to be heard." Morse studied her for a long moment. "You saved them," he said. "I didn't," she replied. "They listened back." He nodded slowly, then gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Stick around. Because I think whatever we found down there," Morse paused, "it might not be the last of its kind. And if it's not, I'm going to need someone who can hear what the rest of us miss." Dana smiled softly, then sat down, folding one leg under her. "I'll bring coffee next time. Bring boots, too." No promises. Outside, the sky lightened from indigo to gray. A new day rising over a world that now carried a strange kind of silence. Not the silence of ignorance, but of attention, of echoes waiting to be heard. And somewhere, beneath the earth, the spiral kept turning,